Wow, MSTR with a huge move today, which of course did bring MSTY up quite nicely. Now, I'm excited about that, but in the same breath, I'm also a little concerned about these jumps with MSTR. Let me show you what I mean. Hello my friends, this is Legend. So today, MSTR jumped up quite nicely today. Had a huge move. And of course, then MSTY had a big move as well. Now, I love to see those moves like that, but there is a bit of a concern. And we're going to go over that and also take a look to see if we have broke that resistance line and to see if we can move it on up still. So let's just slide right over to my charts and check it out. All right, so we're looking at MSTY right now, and I am on the actual chart. So these are the actual movements of the candles. And you can see, look at this. Wow, ain't that nice? That is a nice jump up. Yesterday we closed at $13.96, but today we opened at $14.18. Oh yes, right? We hit as high as $14.47, but then came back just a little bit and closed at $14.35, and that's a 2.79% jump. Nice, right? Very nice. Love it. Super excited, right? We are seeing this continued trend up, and that's a great sign. We're now starting to see some higher highs and higher lows. So that's a great sign on MSTY. But we'll take a look at MSTR here in a minute, and I'll show you what I'm concerned about. And I'll also do a comparison between the two of MSTY and MSTR to further explain my concern. But before we do that, if you like this kind of content, hit that like button and subscribe button. It'd be much appreciated. So now let's just flip this chart here right over to the adjusted chart. And let's just see where MSTY is setting currently. All right, we're on that adjusted chart now. And you can see there's that uptrend that we're having on these candles. Look what we're hitting. We stopped pretty much right there on that MA20, which is the midpoint of that Bollinger Band. And I told you that would be a bit of a resistance, right? So we'll need to break past that. So hopefully we can get back up here and use that MA20 as a support line, and that would be great. You can see the momentum bars. We did cross over today, right? We now have a green momentum bar, which means we did make that cross on the MACD. The RSI is moving up, so we've got some great signs. Got a little bit more volume than we had yesterday. I would still prefer a bit more volume to help us get past that MA20. But I am very excited about the move up on MSTY. So now let's just go ahead and check out MSTR. And here we are on MSTR. Now check this out, right? We've got the candle above the midpoint on the Bollinger Band. We just pretty much shot right past it, right? That midpoint on that Bollinger Band here is sitting at 328.80, but we opened today at 332.47. So we opened above that MA20, and that MA20 is this blue line, which is the midpoint of that Bollinger Band. We just popped right past it. We're in the upper half of that Bollinger Band. We got some nice volume today, right? We got a little increase in volume. The momentum bars did increase on the green side. That's great. And we are getting some separation on that MACD. So all of these are great signs. But look, I mean, MSTR shot up 5.03% in a day. Wow, right? That's a $16 move up. But 5% up? Crazy, right? What a heck of a move in one day. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Bitcoin moved up, and you can see that right here. Look at this huge candle on Bitcoin, right? I mean, that's a beautiful candle right there. So this all sounds like great news for MSTY, right? Sounds like great news. We got a huge candle. I mean, today Bitcoin opened at 114, and it's sitting at the high right now for the day, right? So it all sounds wonderful. A big green candle on Bitcoin. We got Mr. with that huge jump up and a green candle. And then we've got Misty here jumping up with a green candle as well. Sounds like everything's doing great. Well, I'll have to say that Bitcoin and Mr. are indeed doing great, right? That huge jump up on Bitcoin and that huge jump up on Mr. right here, those are two great signs. And we do need Mr. and Bitcoin to move up so that Misty can move up as well, right? But do notice one thing. On Misty, we went up 2.7%, but Mr. went up 5%, right? So we only went up half of what Mr. went up. And that'll be true anytime we have these huge jumps, right? Most of the time, Misty will not move as much as Mr. or any of these YieldMax ETFs, right? They all normally will not move as much as the underlying. Now, if Mr. moved up, say 2.5%, then Misty would have probably been about 2.5%, right? But when Mr. moves 5%, I don't think we'll get that kind of move on Misty. We'll see like 2.5%. Now, that is still moving up, right? So Misty here is still moving up, and that's a great sign. But the part that I worry about, and the point that I was making at the beginning of the video of some of my concerns here, is that since Misty writes those covered calls, right? So they are capped on the upside. So if Mr. itself shoots up like it did today, that big jump up and then a big run up, and it moves up 5%, well, then you look at Misty and it jumps up and it moves up, but it's only moving up 2.5% roughly, right? So half of what Mr. does. So with that being said, if we continue to have these big jumps here on Mr. at a 5% jump or more, right? Then Misty will move up, but not as quickly, right? Only like half of what Mr. will move if it's more than 2.5, right? Now I've seen before where Mr. moved up 2.5 and Misty would move up just a little bit over 2.5, right? Or just a little under 2.5. But when Mr. jumps up like 5% like it did today, then Misty just cannot make that jump, right? It is limited on the upside. So it pretty much seems to max out around that 2.5, 2.7 or so like that, right? Now that's not guaranteed. That is just something that I have observed on the times that I've looked at it. So again, you're thinking, well, but it's moving up. That's great. But my point is, if it moves up too fast, Misty cannot keep up. It will always lag if Mr. moves too fast. So let me throw some numbers on a spreadsheet here just to show you what I mean and what kind of differences you could be looking at if you were having a certain percentage jump up per entry, right? So let me pull that up real quick right here. All right, so here we are looking at this spreadsheet that I just threw together, and it's really just to help explain what it is that I'm talking about. It's not really calculating anything, but it is hopefully going to help you understand what I mean by if Mr. is moving up more than Misty. And we're going to put that Misty is just going to max out at about 2.5% jump up. Now again, that's not guaranteed, and I'm not saying that it can't move up higher. I'm just using this as an example. And then I've got Mr. with 2.5%, 5%, and 8% for each entry, right? And I've got something like 15 or 16 entries right here that we'll use for this example. So first of all, we'll just look. All right, so if Misty itself at $13 and each entry here or each price change, it moves up 2.5%, okay? Now, I know it's not going to move up 2.5% every single time, right? This is just to show the differences that you'll see if Mr. outperforms Misty. And you'll be able to see what that overall difference is going to be. So for Misty here, moving up at 2.5%, starting at $13. So 2.5% of that takes you to $13.33, right? So if I drag this formula right on down, we'll see what we end up with at 2.5% per entry. All right, there we go. I've got MSTY at 2.5% increase for each one of these, right? So it increases 2.5% each time. And I've added these numbers here so you can see that we have a total of 16 entries right here. So we moved from $13 up to $18.83. And that's a 2.5% move each single day or entry, whatever you want to say that these are, right? These aren't real. This is just to show you the difference. So we'll say that each one is 1 day. So off of 16 days, you've went from 13 to 1883. Now, MSTR at 2.5%, it goes from $300 to $434.49. Now, in relation to each other, they moved up the same, right? The same percentage each single time. And you can see that right here. I've got the overall percent change, 44.83 and 44.83. So they both moved up 44, almost 45%, okay? From 13 to 18 for MSTY and 300 to 434 for MSTR. Now, what if MSTR moves up 5% each entry or each day, in this case that we're using for this example? If that was the case, MSTR would go from $300 to $623.68. Now, what is the overall percentage change on that? That's 107.89% change for MSTR, moving up each day by 5%. And then what if it's 8%? It would go from that $300 up to $951.65, which would be a 217.22% change in MSTR if it moved up 8% each day. So what is this here telling us? Well, basically meaning that if MSTR moves up 2.5, MSTY moves up 2.5, it can stay up with it. But if MSTR moves up 5% each time, right, and it gets to pretty much doubling, right, that's 100%, going from 300 to 600, then it gets to a high enough price to where then it is setting, right? But we only moved up 44%. So we are not able to move up that same 100% because MSTR's moving up too fast. We need it to move up, but we need it to move up at a pace where MSTY can keep up. And that pace, in my opinion, is closer to about 2.5% move. Now, that's not guaranteed that if MSTR moved 2.5, that MSTY's going to move 2.5. But from what I've seen before on times where it has had a jump, where MSTR went up, say 2.6, MSTY had went up like 2.6, right? But for the instance of today, where MSTR moved up 5%, MSTY still only moved at 2.5% roughly. MSTR moving up even 200%, right? And we would still only get to move up 44%. So you see this huge gain on MSTR, and we're getting a gain on MSTY as well, but just not as much, right? We are capped on that upside, which does keep us from moving up like the underlying, right? Now, my overall worry about that is the fact that if it moves too fast, then unless MSTR starts going to a 10x, right, to where it's gone up 1,000% so that MSTY could get up to close to doubling, right, then I think that MSTY is just going to be lagging. And we know it does. But if MSTR would just not make those huge pops, then of course we can keep up with it on MSTY. Now don't get me wrong, I'm super excited the fact that MSTR did have a nice green candle, a nice move up, and MSTY had a nice move up. I'll take the wins, believe me, I'll take the wins. But if I want my cake and eat it too, I want MSTR to move up a little bit more slower so that MSTY can try to capture more of that move up. Because on a huge move on a stock or an ETF, eventually it gets capped out and then it starts trading sideways or starts coming back down. Now in this case, if you moved up 100% on MSTR at 5% each time, and you're sitting at this 623 and MSTY is at 1883, well, if MSTR dropped back 50%, you would be looking at it going right back to about what it was, right? At 50% of 623 is 311. But what happens with MSTY? Because we would probably take all of that downside pretty much, right? So if MSTY dropped that 50%, it would be at $9.41, right? And that is below where we started, right? So we take all of that downside most of the time, but we don't get to take all of the upside. So when it goes back down, it hurts us a little bit harder, right? Because we go down further in price than MSTR does. And that's why we need to be a little closer in that move up, at least as close as we can get, so that whenever it does pull back, we're not getting hit with a drop like this, right? To where MSTR comes right back to a little above where it was, where it originally started, right? If it started at $300 right here, and then after a 50% move after it went to 600, you're now at a little over $300. But for MSTY, at a 2.5% move, went from 13 to 1883, and then a 50% drop on that takes it down to 941. And like I said, that's below where it even started. So then you run it again and you say from that 311 right here, if it doubles, goes up another 100%, now you're at 622. But for MSTY at 941, it goes up 50%, and that takes it up to about $14 and some odd cents, right? Maybe close to $15. So nowhere near where MSTR is, right? So as we know, stocks and ETFs go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Well, we need MSTY to go up as much as MSTR so that when MSTR does go down and MSTY goes down, we take that same kind of hit, right? Now, I know I'm asking for a lot here, and MSTR is definitely going to outperform MSTY on the price. We've seen it on many of these ETFs and underlyings, so this is nothing new to anyone. But that is also the reason why I do not necessarily drip. I do reinvest my distributions when the current price is below my adjusted price per share, because that just helps to reduce my adjusted price per share. But if it is not, then I do not want to buy, because I do not want to increase that for this reason right here, right? Because this here tells you as MSTR goes up and down, MSTY cannot go lockstep with it, right? It's just not going to. We all know that. So you got to make sure that you account for the price drop. So I do reinvest my distributions when it's going to help me to reduce my overall adjusted price per share. Now, currently my adjusted price per share is $1.11, so I'm not going to be able to actually purchase any more shares. But once I do get MSTY paid off, then I will be able to buy more shares with those distributions, because at that time MSTY would be paid off in full and those distributions will be free and clear, and I can use all of it, a certain percentage of it, or do whatever I want to buy more shares of MSTY or buy more shares of anything else I want to buy. So, and that's the reason why I do pay attention to my adjusted price per share or my real price per share, which I've shown in other videos. I just wanted to show you what happens whenever MSTR moves up a high percentage and MSTY just cannot move that same percentage up. But when it moves down 50% on MSTR and then moves 50% down on MSTY, how you don't necessarily go back to the same price that MSTR's at. you are actually at an even lower price, right? And then Mr. moves up a double again, and Misty only moves up 50%, and you can just kind of see how you're backtracking just a little bit. But Misty does pay out those distributions to help offset that, but you do have to make sure that you're paying attention to your adjusted price per share so that you're not increasing your average price per share or your adjusted price per share. Because if you are increasing that, yes, you are increasing your shares and your potential distribution earnings, but you're definitely increasing the time it'll take to get paid back of what you've put into it. And of course, all of this is my opinion, but it is what I'm kind of basically showing in my spreadsheets that I've shown you in previous videos. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, legend out.